Good morning, Autonomizers. My name is Joshua Hale, and welcome to Do It Live Autonomy Podcast. Today on our show, we are joined by Hedda Marie, Tyler, Agnieszka's hiding in here somewhere, and we might get Chris if he can get his signal above two bars. We have a really exciting show today, lots to cover, and I'm just going to jump right in. So on last Sunday, we had Cash Flow. That's a game by Robert Kiyosaki, and it is one that I didn't grow up with, that's for sure. But Lisa has been offering to organize and run the night or the game and be able to broadcast that on Zoom, and we're all able to join and play from all around the world. Tyler, did you join for that? And you want to give a little recap?
Yeah, I did. And I wasn't familiar with the game. I didn't do a lot of pre-investigation on it. Besides just hearing people talk about it in Discord, and Lisa explained the basics of it. So I didn't know what to expect. And I'm glad I joined because I got an idea for what the game is about. I downloaded all the slides and rules and the different characters that you can be in the game. Lisa shared all that, so at least now I have it all ready to go to play again. But it was teaching about building financial intelligence and understanding a lot more about purchasing things and investing in things and taking risk with investments that might have a really positive upside. And it might seem scary or unknown if you're not familiar with all the concepts or terms or how things might, change over time. So I didn't get to finish the game. I unfortunately had to read what we call bookies late that night. On a Sunday night was the game, but I'll look forward to bringing that game to my family and playing. The kids version is something we've looked into here. But once you create a passive income in the game, you're able to exit the rat race. And so they even call it, the rat race in the game. And the idea is that you become positive in your assets to the point where they're producing enough passive income to where you can exit the rat race. So I didn't know until you just said that it was a Robert Kiyosaki game. And now it makes a lot more sense, being that he's very, at least in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, was very specific about the difference between an asset and a liability. And, the example of like a home, how a lot of people picture that as an asset, but it's really not, it's a liability. So yeah, that's good to know. And it was fun.
Yeah. Those were concepts I was not even familiar with or even heard of before. I'd say the last 2 years. I think I came across Rich Dad Poor Dad, the book, about 2 years ago. And as everybody in the community knows, I just hit 40, and so that is something I wish I had 25 years ago, before I started even dealing with money. And it's great that they put it into a game format, because it helps you be able to conceptualize and be able to see what's the difference between an asset and a liability. Eric shared a story right before we started, and about his experience with cash flow. And I recorded it, so I'm going to play it. Everybody can hear it now.
Poor police officer.
A poor district in New York. It's called Hell's Kitchen. Fictional name.
Anyway.
But it was fun because I was really poor, right? Only making $3,000 a paycheck. And I only had $200 cash in hand. But then I had the opportunity to invest in stocks that were traditionally selling high. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm buying. And I took a $5,000 loan I bought 200 shares, and then I just waited my time. I bided my time, so I knew I was getting myself in a little debt. But then the occasion presented itself where I could sell them for 10 times their worth. So I went from that $5,000 loan, and I made $50,000 out of that. And thanks to that, I was able to buy an 8-plex. And from that, I was able to sell the 8-plex, and now I'm rolling in the dough.
Thanks for sharing that experience with us, Eric. Again, those things were probably not even on the police officer's radar before he was able to take those opportunities. I remember only being able to, I only understood how to make money by exchanging my time for an hourly rate. Anything outside of that, I thought was just magic, like how people were wealthy and had more money than they were spending each week. And so, yeah, again, I'm really excited to partake in that game when I'm able to line up my schedule. Thanks, Lisa, for putting that on. It really puts out a lot of value into the community, and that money management is crucial in being successful. We surpassed our 1-year anniversary here in Autonomy this last week. It was on the 21st that Richard first put out his email blast announcing the course to the community. I do remember I was on that list, and that's when I hit him up from all angles, wanting to support and make this thing a reality. So I know it's already touched hundreds of people's lives and has improved them, and it's really great to be now on the second season, going through this material a second time, because there's so much material that there's no way to absorb it all as you go through it the first time. And now definitely different aspects are jumping out to me. I could have sworn that they weren't in the first season, that there's such bombshells that it is really making an impact on me right now. Let me go around the room and ask everybody, what was the biggest highlight of your week for you personally?
Well, first of all, you forgot to say autoniversary. So we have to say that, and I screwed it up. So I'm a season 2 guy, so maybe it's opposite that I went first. So hopefully some season 1 people can fill in the full year. I just want to say congratulations to everyone who's participated and made the course what it is up to this point. Richard, Joshua, Agnieszka, all the season 1 people. I know I just made a short list, so I left a lot of people out. But it's really been a beautiful experience for me in my life to find autonomy and incorporate it in. And so the structure that's here, I know, is not just something that appeared, and I know that there's been a lot of hard work that's gone into it, including yourself, Joshua. I really appreciate the things that have you've gone the extra mile on, including this podcast. This isn't something that has to be here. So I think it's really, like I said, beautiful to see people in autonomy coming together and working together in this quote unquote online community of people that are doing this. So Agnieszka, why don't you jump in next?
Sure, sounds good. I find that autonomy, it layers upon itself. Like even within one season, it layers upon itself. But then the second season makes those foundations so much stronger. And just the understanding of how I can stand up for myself, how I can be my best self, how I can, it sounds so cliche, right? How can you be your best self? But in reality, it's like every single minute of every day, we make these decisions. We make a decision. What am I going to do today? How am I going to improve the world today? How am I going to improve my life today? My partner's life, my family. You know what I mean? There are so many aspects that autonomy really has a huge, huge influence on, because it's very insidious. It gets under your skin and it makes you stand up and be like the proper man or woman that we were all meant to be. Had we not been squashed, bullied, rejected, put down, whatever. Had our society been a society of elevation, a society of creating positive impact on people, a society of really, really reaching into the people's insides and bringing the best out of them, had that been an element of our society in elementary school, we would all be here 20 years ago. But that's not the case. So the best we can do is step into autonomy and keep working at it until we rise up to where we were meant to be. So rise up, everybody.
Really well said. Thanks, Agnieszka. Etta Marie, how has been your experience in autonomy since you joined for season 2?
For me, it has been very enlightening because I had a lot of ideas, but I've never got to share them with anyone. But as I heard Richard more and more, and now that I've been able to be part of the program, every time that I hear lectures and to see the interaction and the people, it confirms a lot of the ideas that I had. So to me, it has been a tremendous boost in my life, especially in the, I want to say in the transition, but in the circumstances that we find ourselves, this has been, it has come at a good time. So I don't regret that I'm not younger when I met this. I think it's the perfect timing. And this week has been very significant. From the last week, one of the challenges was to practice. And so I was very surprised that one of the autonomizers got into my list. And I'm very glad that I was able to honor that timing because of the situation with my husband in the hospital. But what really impacted me was that this, I don't know if we're allowed to give names. I'm not going to give names, but he was just very tired because he worked all night. He was just very tired. Well, you will see it because I'm going to edit the video. And my sense of admiration for this person went to the roof. And also the feedback, when we finished the call, I was telling my husband, if we are good and if we have been able to get this far without inviting feedback, imagine how good we can become now that we have the opportunity to have others giving us insights and making us better. So he challenged me to do this again and again and again until we polish this sales pitch. So it was just very, very affirming and very encouraging.
That sounds really inspiring. And I definitely resonate with a lot with what you said. That feedback mechanism, being able to have that in our life, we're no longer just trying and waiting for the results to bounce back from from the world, but we actually get some like immediate feedback so we can hyper learn and be able to course correct and make adjustments, not be afraid to try because we have that support. And something that popped in my head was being able to process what it is that we're thinking about, from everything from geopolitics to trying to figure out a mechanism in our sales funnel. But I noticed myself, I was jumping over the processing part. I would have input, I'd be exposed to something, some wild idea, and then I'd jump to output and try and like share it with those around me without actually processing it. And I was getting really strong reactions because it didn't really pertain to them. I was trying to bounce it off and talk out loud, and it was creating distance in my relationships because I was essentially using them to process. But now with this community, we get to put something out there and get immediate feedback, and be able to like toss it if it's rubbish, or we get validation that there's something there and it can be refined and it's worth working on.
The one thing that I was thinking when you said that you wished you had it 20 years ago was that, would you be ready for this 20 years ago? Would you poo-poo these ideas 20 years ago? Would you be like, oh, these people are just weird. I don't think I want to, like, you know, open myself up. I don't want my vulnerability to be shared with the people, right? Because, you know, as we're practicing different skills, we have to be vulnerable. We have to stand up and go, okay, I'm going to practice this sales skill. I'm going to practice this interview skill. I'm going to practice this business skill, and actually open ourselves up to failure, right? Fail often and fail faster so you can succeed sooner, right? Isn't that what Richard says? But, and if you look at the society, a lot of people self-actualize around 35 to 50. That seems to be the magical age, right? Like, look at some people who become famous or they can really step into their craft around those ages. So I think we're on time and we're doing awesome.
That's great, Agnieszka. Thanks. And you're right. I could not handle rejection back then. So trying to implement these skills without the ability to handle rejection, which really is just feedback, but we personalize it and think that I'm not good enough instead of what I'm working on is not good enough. And I wouldn't have even tried. And that's why I didn't come in contact with this stuff. And because that information was out there. Rich Dad Poor Dad has been out for a long time, but my future self had to read it. Not who I was when I was younger. Well, fantastic. This is off to a great start. We're going to keep this train moving. Next up, Tuesday night, we had Brett's MasterMind group, and I was able to just catch the tail end of it, but we got a clip here, and Tyler was able to talk to Brett that night, and we're gonna start there.
A lot of us, like 10 years ago, I was in a sea of people who were, wandering into podcasting at that time with the libertarian label because it was easy to have an identity using that. You know what I mean? And it was in the midst of the whole Ron Paul revolution. It seemed like in the podcasting world and in so much of what social media and the internet was then, there was just a very accepting audience basically lying in wait for content like that to come along. It doesn't seem to be the case anymore, right? Like even a lot of the people that I knew who were very passionate about the cause of liberty have drifted into supporting Trump or even, somewhere further a lot of them further to the right even. So have you thought, before we get back to actually content planning, have you thought about what that might look like for you as far as giving it some definition and also identifying like the ideal listener avatar that you want to find?
Probably not on paper, but I've thought about it. I mean, definitely the content itself has been mapped out, and there's general topics, basically like series, kind of a little bit like what you do. I mean, there's a series, and you can kind of, is there 4 or 6 episodes in the series, and then once that series comes to a conclusion, you can move on to another topic that, and it isn't just all over the place, broad scope. A lot of what I've been talking about is like movements and kind of actually correcting myself from the previous work. So as time goes on, right, you change your mind, but your work is still out there. And so my idea was, I've got to spend a good amount of time kind of not retracting, but just showing that I've evolved the ideas and maybe even kind of refuting some of the previous ideas that I held. And so lately it's just been a lot of that, kind of like fixing up what has been previously stated. As far as the audience growth versus whatever the hell I want to say, there's an in-between balance there for sure. I see the value in having an audience that later on, when I have something like autonomy that or any other kind of high ticket item, that there's people there that now I can kind of sell to, although that's definitely not the main objective. Like it's definitely all kind of vocational. I don't do this for a living. I'm not trying to do it for a living. So I want to have a lot of freedom in that way too. So I don't ever feel like, oh, if I say this, I might lose money. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I want to take care of all that in other ways, and then the content is just pure, clean, no products being promoted in the first 10 minutes or whatever.
Yeah.
So
One thing
more
that
about the consistency is kind of the issue, the major issue that I have with any of these projects that I mentioned, even in the past ones. It was always hardcore for 2 or 3 months, and then, you know, it's hard to keep that up. It's hard to keep, I mean, maybe not if you're totally passionate and you drop everything else, but, you know, there's a lot of stuff that comes up.
Well, I think one of the most important things, especially if you feel your interests changing or your views evolving as they should, is you don't want to pigeonhole yourself in a way where maintaining an audience relies on you doing a very specific thing. It's not a fun world to be in. And I think that the people who do the best job with like building a very, very loyal audience, their priority is the projection of their personality, right? Like that's sort of like front and center. I'm this person. This is what I'm into. This is what I'm all about. This is this is why I'm likable. This is why I'm funny. You know, without stating it explicitly, like now I'm going to tell you why I'm funny and likable. But showing people that consistently, because then people will change directions with you willingly, right? And you can think of probably examples of YouTubers who have evolved or changed or, you know, found an entirely different like pursuit, but through that they've maintained their audience. So I think that connecting with the audience is a top priority by, you know, as my colleague Landon Porter says, he has a show called Sales Gorilla, by being your weird ass self, right? Like not being afraid to be unique, to project honesty, authenticity, some vulnerability. I think that those things are really important. And then you actually build relationships with people. I mean, even if they never actually meet you, they feel like they know you.
Tyler, how is it having Brett available to the autonomy community on Tuesday nights? And how is that experience talking to him?
Yeah, it's a tremendous value add to the community. Brett has started the MasterMind thing. I think that's episode 2. So rather than a soapbox style, he's taking on challenging questions, challenging issues from people in autonomy that can come in and present an issue to him. And you saw a great example of it there. I'm kind of going back and forth with different ideas on how to produce content moving forward with my ideas. And Brett, being a seasoned, experienced content producer, was somebody that I could go to. And I've heard him talk about this on his shows before. I've heard him and Richard talk about it, Richard and Ernie. And so to be able to kind of take, he says, you know, hey, I've got this question here. There was quite a few sessions of dead air, which can happen in autonomy, where somebody sets something up and then everybody kind of gets gun shy or they're not ready. Or a lot of the time it's, for me, I'm, you know, over making dinner, doing the dishes more often. Actually, my wife is more of the cook than I am. So that would be misguiding to say that I'm usually cooking dinner, because I'm usually not. But anyways, the whole point being that, yeah, to be able to sit down and have someone like Brett with his experience and then bring an issue to him. And, you know, he did give me some really good advice. And not only that, but there was other people that were able to come in and post questions to him. And he's, I think, kind of having a like mind-blowing awakening experience to all this new technology and the things that he can do to utilize the technology for like his summit that he did, the ideas into action. There's all these pieces that you can start to plug in now to add value. And that's what we were also talking about is, you know, now that it's so easy, you better make sure you have something good to say, right? Because there's going to be a lot of crap out there, and not that there already isn't, but it's so easy now to flip on your phone, have a YouTube channel, go live. You know, you can be on your way to work and just spit some thoughts out for the day. And a lot of that is going on. So my goal is always to not do that, to not just put out something that somebody's already doing. Now, obviously, there's going to be overlap with any kind of content, blogs, videos, podcasts, actual books that you write, but definitely always keeping in mind that you want to come from your unique self and your unique experience and try not to just do something that somebody else is already doing. So yeah, like you said, Joshua, to have the ability to sit down with Brett face to face and have a conversation, like that wouldn't have been happening without joining Autonomy. So it's just a good example of one of the value adds that people on the fringe that might be wondering, should I do this? Is it for me? A lot of these things aren't advertised explicitly. And so I think that's one of the big value adds also of Do It Live, is you get a little glimpse into what's going on weekly in Autonomy.
I remember the first time I talked to Brett, and I was so nervous and honestly starstruck. And I think I have moved past that. I know a lot of the other student body has moved past that, just because Brett is a real guy and he loves to help, and he's very considerate and kind person to talk to. And so, yeah, to have him as a resource, he's been doing podcasts for 10 years, I want to say, has a wealth of knowledge since going through that whole gambit. I know he doesn't enjoy his first series of podcasts just because of the quality, but it really shows how much he's gained and learned along the way. And to have that available is, yeah, like you said, priceless. Chris McMillan, are you in the house?
With a pinch of salt. Because my internet's a bit funny today. I switched sources, so stop me if I start fading.
Looking good.
Happy
so
birthday,
far.
Joshua. Happy birthday. Happy 40th.
Thanks. Thanks, Chris. I got so much love from all the birthday wishes yesterday, and it was really great to
Well, you're doing a great job, and I know I wish I knew I had half the skills that you have now when I was 40. That's for sure.
Sure. Well, that's good perspective. Thanks, Chris. Now I'm going to put you on the spot, man. You went to Red Pill 2 weeks ago, along with Tyler and a few other autonomizers, and you just put out a publication, interview with Robert Scott Bell. Is that correct?
Yeah. I mean, Tyler did a fantastic job, way beyond any expectation of editing that, and he had 3 cameras set up. So all I did was I sat down with him for 5 minutes and gave a very basic overview. I would have loved to have gone into more detail with him. He's such an interesting guy. He has put himself through, and he's demonstrated that you can be healthy without big pharma. You know, he was a sickly child. He had a lot of health issues, and that's the core of his show. It was nice to get to meet him and talk to him briefly. He did a great job as MC of the, Master of Ceremonies of the Red Pill Expo. And it was great to get him to sit down and talk a little bit about we just did an overview of his thoughts on Red Pill Expo, but I would definitely like to further see what he has to say about all these issues that he brings up. And he's also very big into gold-backed currency as well. He was selling these Utah is the only state that can actually accept gold as currency, and he had these, they're called goldbacks, little bills, and I bought, it was 1/1000th of gold in it, and it was $3. They had one for $3, for $10, and one for $20. And in the state of Utah, you could actually go and spend that, from what I understood, from what he was telling me.
Cool. I remember Badnarik mentioning that in one of his videos. So it's good to know that there's alternative forms of currency. I'm going to go ahead and play a clip, and then we can talk a little bit more about the production of it.
Everybody, Chris McMillan here, and this is an interview with Autonomy for the Autonomy Season 1 and 2 class going on, and for the Autonomy channel, Richard Grove's Tragedy and Hope. I'm here with Robert Scott Bell, the Robert Scott Bell Show. Robert, you were the MC here at the Red Pill Expo in Mesquite, Nevada.
Yeah.
I think you did a fantastic job, and I commend you as well. There was a speaker who missed their plane.
Yes.
You stepped in and gave a fantastic presentation in their place. I think you did a great job.
Oh, thanks.
What are your thoughts on how the Red Pill Expo went this time round?
Well, other than me not knowing I was going to lecture and lecturing, which actually turned out great. Wonderful opportunity that Ed provides. This was the first Red Pill Expo I'd been to, knew about it, of course, and been trying to get to it, Ed and I, and it's always timing. And to experience the diversity of presentations and the depth of them.
Yeah.
And I commented this many times as MC. I said, you know, what I'm so impressed with is not just people screaming out in the dark and angry, right? It's about also providing pathways to solve the problems, to make it better, right? To transform people's lives for the better and empower them once again. And so that doesn't always happen in places. A lot of times you'll get together and scream and yell and feel like, oh, that was awesome. Well, to me, that's not awesome. That just leaves you in the lurch and makes you more angst-filled, fear-filled. And I think with the group here, everybody came in and said, you know, here's a pathway out of this mess. And I think we can't overstate the importance of when you're presenting new information that can be shocking and scary, that you also provide pathways out of the mess. And that's what happened here at the Red Pill Expo, and I think the Red Pill University is doing the same.
I'm going to save the rest for everybody to go check that out themselves. But Chris, that was some nice footage you got there, and I actually really appreciated the audio quality. How'd you do that?
No. Tyler's the man to ask for that. Tyler had these cuff mics that he put on each of us. Yeah, and it was very professional looking. He had the most professional looking setup. So it was just a question of me getting Robert Scott Bell and G. Edward Griffin out to just have a little chat. I had preempted G. Edward Griffin coming out. I had told him days before, we're going to get you Sunday morning. And Robert Scott Bell was a bit spontaneous. I just saw him there, and I gave him, I said, come on out and talk to us. So he was happy to do that. And we were lucky with the weather. It was such a beautiful day. It was a bright morning, as you can see. It was a beautiful setting. I think they did well in choosing the location of that. And I look forward to hearing what happens with the development of the next Red Pill Expo in June, which might be at Jekyll Island in Georgia. That would be exciting.
Wow.
If that happens.
Cool. Tyler, tell us a little bit about the scene that you set up.
Yeah, so over the years I've been gathering little pieces of equipment and kind of preparing to do interviews like that. And to be honest with you, it's a work in progress. And just like we were talking about earlier, that autonomy is a great place to get these ideas tested. And for some reason, it doesn't feel like there's as much pressure, even though those are real interviews that Chris and I did with real people who are out there, you know, on their life's work, very serious stuff. It's not like they're playing around. I mean, Robert Scott Bell, he's broadcasting 2 hours a day, 6 days a week down here in Provo, not too far from me. Joshua, your screen is being shared again for some reason, which is probably fine, but it might do something up in the post edit. There you go. But yeah, I'm going to make an effort to probably go visit Robert here. We got to meet him. But anyway, the setup itself is very rudimentary. It's quite the student's setup. It's not very, you know, people call it professional, but the cameras are all different. Ultimately, you'd want like the same camera, same lenses, maybe one special lens to focus in on the guest. But I'm not dissatisfied with the production. I thought it went really well. There was tech hiccups all across the board, but that's why you build in redundancy and additional cameras. And Chris, like you said, he's like the hunter out there, and he's very good at, you know, speaking with people, walking right up to people, and he kind of sold the idea of coming out and talking with a couple strangers that these people have never met to do an interview. And so it was a team effort for sure. I mean, because there was quite a bit of setup involved, but there was also quite a bit of making sure the person's going to be available so that all the setup was worth it. And Chris was definitely on it. Like he said, the whole time, kind of dropping the mention of it a few days earlier, and then making sure he closed that, at the time of the event, because we could have very easily set up, and G. Edward could have been pulled off into the 20 other people that were trying to get his attention at that time. So that's the next one on the table. Hopefully Chris and I can do some work again in the future. We've already got an interview scheduled with each other that we'll do a live stream. Maybe we'll figure out a way to live stream to Autonomy and my channel. For now, we were just going to do it to my channel in case there's any hiccups, and put a post-production one in Autonomy YouTube channel. So again, I've said it several times, but making it real and meeting people and face-to-face, and that was probably the most cementing factor of what I've experienced so far in Autonomy. Not that there hasn't been a dozen other things I could mention that have been beneficial, but making it real like that, connecting with people, getting out in the field, and doing interviews with Chris and all that. It was just really, I mean, I'm still kind of doing the backlog from that whole trip, and taking time off, and in the middle of Autonomy and in the middle of my life, taking 4 days and going out and screwing around in the desert. Because me and my family went and drove around in Nevada and Arizona and Utah and explored Capitol Reef National Park and the Grand Canyon. And I know Chris did a lot of exploring too.
Yeah, we were on the road for 2.5 weeks. We only got back last Sunday, and I still haven't recovered. I mean, I still haven't gotten my space, and I'm still trying to catch up with all the autonomy related material. But it was a fantastic experience. We're lucky because we are, for the most part, we still have a long way to go, but we are an autonomous family. The kids absolutely don't go to school. They never will. And as far as work-wise, we still had to work, but wherever we have internet, we're able to log on and get things done. So it was an educational trip, and that's what it's all about, taking the kids to these real life places where reality happened, particularly the Navajo Nation. And the kids learned up front the harsh reality of the journey they were forced to take down to West Texas, and how that failed, and then they basically made their way back to Navajo Nation. These were lessons the kids were able to learn. Every road trip, every journey is just a indescribable experience. And Red Pill was definitely the highlight of it. But 2.5 weeks, and now we're already thinking, where's our next trip going to be?
Sounds like the world's your classroom.
Yeah.
How do you took care of the kids so you could go to the meetings? Do they have chaperones?
Which do you mean? Oh yeah, that's a very good question. I did lose a lot of Red Pill. There were a lot of presentations that I did miss because it wasn't fair on the kids. I couldn't spend the whole time. For example, Saturday morning, we just completely skipped all the presentations Saturday morning. We took them to the pool. There's a compromise there. So the answer to the question is we didn't. We did bring them into some of the presentations, and yeah, at one point it got kind of difficult. They were getting restless, and my wife and I, one of us or the other one would have to take them out. For the most part, they were very good. There weren't many children there. There were a few kids. Actually, there were a lot of kids there, but not part of the Red Pill. There were sports. There was a sports tournament going on because that hotel is focused around sports. They had a baseball field, a soccer field. No, it's not easy, but we managed it for, I think, as far as we could. I think we did okay. But yeah, I did miss bits and pieces of the Red Pill. I could have liaised more. I could have networked more. I probably could have got a little bit more content. But so what? I would rather have had the family there at the cost of getting more content than being there alone.
Do you think that if Autonomy were to put together a conference like that, and in the strategy think about a program specifically for the kids, that would be an attractive feature for other families to go?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be, we would be prepared for something like that. I don't think the Red Pill Expo was really designed for having kids on there. Even though kids were welcome and they were free, there wasn't anything set up for them to do elsewhere. I haven't been down to Anarchapulco, but I heard that they do have separate activities just for kids down there on the side. Correct me if I'm wrong, if any of you have been down there. And so I thought Red Pill would be a bit more like that, but this one in Mesquite was much smaller than the one in Hartford, I must say, which the advantage to that was it was easier to, I mentioned this, when I was there a few weeks ago, it was easier to network with the speakers and to meet people. But there wasn't a whole lot to do for the kids on the side, other than, nice hotel, pool. There was an arcade there, but it was a bit weird to figure out how the card worked. I don't know. I put my credit card in, and then I think 5 minutes later, the kids had emptied it. I don't think that was very good bang for your buck.
Yeah, I can chime in a little bit, Chris, on Anarchapulco. We've got something called like a family camp. And essentially there's, a group of people that are there just to, entertain the kids. And then we've got all kinds of different activities at Anarchapulco. So like every day they've got things to do. There's like computers available. There's different people that can train them on different things. There's like one day they go to the pool. One day they've got like a whole bunch of different activities where they even have like one where they go into a restaurant and they like make, like a meal, some kind of different meals or sandwiches or stuff like that, or ice cream cones. So there's a bunch of different activities, and certainly I think it's a model for, I think what you'd be looking for in regard to the family thing. And I'd also like to say, man, you guys all are, man, you have my greatest respect for what you guys are doing, man. I loved everything that you guys are doing. I mean, this whole thing here, I just got to see this the first time just this past week, man. And I love the recap that you guys are doing for just what we do on a weekly basis with autonomy. Everybody is just kind of blossoming in all these different ways and all this different information. I mean, there's just so much here, and it just keeps growing. I'm just so amazed at what all you guys are doing and what you're bringing to the table. It really is inspiring, and man, I am just so excited to be a part of this.
Thanks, Michael. It's really great having you here, and thanks for jumping in and your information on Anarchapulco. Hedda Marie had a great question, and it really is a holistic way to go about events, because we really want successful families instead of just the mom or dad entrepreneur come in and gaining some skills. What Chris is creating is a solid family unit to be able to teach the kids by real world examples, taking the classroom out into the world and really strengthening and creating a strong bond for everybody. And Michael, thanks for jumping in. This is Do It Live. We make this available to the autonomy community when we record, so anybody can hop in and join the conversation. It's really great having you here.
Michael, I just want to say I appreciate your feedback earlier. It was it may have been the week before. Ernie Hancock has put out the Freedom's Phoenix. He put the word out. He wants to get to the bottom of where did the occupancy permit come from. And yeah, I appreciate your feedback with that. I don't know if he's gotten to the bottom of it. He's still looking. He came to me, he approached me at Red Pill and said, look, get on the horn with the autonomy guys. Somebody, I know you've got some researchers there. I need to know the answer to this question. And then I did notice a week later, he actually put the question out on Facebook, and he knows what Facebook is. He knows it for the evil technocratic entity that it is. But the advantage is obviously there's still a lot of traffic. They haven't completely banned us all yet. They're still trying to figure out who we are to oust us. But he put it out there on Facebook. So I'm thinking he really wants to get to the bottom of that. So and while I'm here, yeah, if anyone listening, what are the origins of the occupancy permit? Where did it come from? Because he figured out that's the crux right there. You can buy your own land, but you have to get an occupancy permit to actually live on it. It's a very technical glitch. He's looking into it. And I put the word out, and Michael jumped in there and had some info. I passed it on to him, by the way. I don't know what he's done with it, or what. I haven't followed up with him on that.
Yeah, Ernie is definitely a powder keg of energy, and I don't know if you saw that latest video that he did with James Corbett, and kind of outlined 3 areas that they're going to focus on for the 2020 election. But I think, and also Chris, your visit with James Evan Pilato, I thought that was really cool too. So awesome job there.
We met him in a comic book store. Well, that's where we arranged to meet. It wasn't random. He said, "Hey, come meet me." And I thought it was a convenient place, but turns out that's his regular, whatever. What day of the week was it? I think it was a Friday night, Saturday night. I can't remember now. That's his thing. So we met at a comic book store, went out to dinner with him. It was a great experience getting to talk to him about relevant issues that he talks about every day on his show. And we talked about probably 10 to 15 different heavy topics. And also we kept it light, get to know his wife as well. Yeah, he's still adapting to New Mexico. And it's just fantastic meeting all these people in person who are influencers in the truth movement in our lives every day. They put in the work and the time. So it was a pleasure for me to be able to thank him for the work he does in person.
Chris, were you going up to influencers and having interviews with them before Autonomy?
Before Autonomy, no. No, just listening. I was just a consumer.
Awesome. So some of the skills that you got from Autonomy, you were able to apply in your real life, and now it sounds like you're on fire. There's no one you won't go up and engage and then grab some content with by capturing that. Yeah,
the approach, you just have to have a goal, a clear goal. It was one of the lectures from season 1. It was I can't remember which one it was, but basically Richard spent some time how to approach people of influence, and whether it may have been on the part about getting a raise, working your way up in the corporate world. He did do a section on that. But you make a proposal that they can't refuse. Offer something of value, and it comes back to sales. Situation where everybody's happy. They'll gain this, and I will gain this, and that's how you have to go about it. You have to ask yourself, what would this person gain from talking to me? And you better have an answer for that.
Awesome. So there's still so much value that this course still has yet to offer. We still have at least 4 more weeks of lectures to go through. It'll probably go longer, but let's keep moving forward as we have lots else to cover from this last week. Tyler, we did a Tech Tuesday with Agnieszka and where we covered how to stream to restream. I was going to play a clip for that, but just for time purposes, what all did we accomplish there?
Yeah, so a lot of that is things that we've been talking about in regards to the show. Even Joshua and you and I met previously to that, talking about similar setups and playing around with OBS and Zoom. So Agnieszka, Deirdre, some other Autonomy members, maybe some exterior people to Autonomy are doing a podcast. She can talk about that. Maybe we'll pass the mic over to her next. But basically, we just went through taking Zoom, the application that we're using now to record Do It Live and to meet for Do It Live, and then pumping that through a broadcasting software off to Restream .io, which will take it and put it out on the social media platforms or content platforms that you're trying to get it to. So it's really simple, even if that sounded complicated. It's just taking what's on your screen and putting it on the internet, basically, with some extra bells and whistles tied in. And the more and more I think about this, the more and more we do Tutorial Tuesdays. I do love joining and teaching and being a student of all this stuff, because it's taking people that are on the fence about content production and saying, well, here's the tools. What's your next excuse? If that's what they're stumbled up on, and saying, well, I'd love to put this out, but there's all these hurdles. And, with people in this group, that doesn't fly. You can't you can't put an excuse like, oh, I don't want to, I don't know how to do it, because we'll put a course together, or somebody will say, well, that's a great opportunity for me to teach you about this. Let's have a meeting about it, and then that becomes a class eventually. So I'm happy to keep doing stuff like that, and also, like I said, attending like D&D labs. I don't know if you were going to mention that still with Tony, learning all this stuff to help increase my production value in a selfish way, but then give back to the community and help others increase their production value. And so if others are getting podcasts started, and also, by the way, Agnieszka, I wanted to mention, because offline she'll correct my the way I say things, which is totally incorrect the way I'm saying them. And I want to say that I really appreciate that. And then I'm not ever like, oh, I wish she would just stop doing. Like, please keep doing that. And I'm from the West. I'm from Utah. We talk a little bit slower out here, and we kind of, we're a little loose with how our pronunciation on mountains and other words like that, So if there's something that I'm saying that needs to be corrected, I am not going to be offended at all. And I'll dish it right back to you too if there's something I can help with, or that I see that's incorrect with the technical side of things or something. But jump right in and tell us about your podcast a little bit, and if there are any other technical challenges that you've been fighting through with it.
Yeah. So I have like 4 things to say. So first of all, thank you very much for doing that session with us, because ever since everybody been installing OBS last year at the beginning of Autonomy, I was just hearing all of these things, how it's difficult to set up and people are having problem. And then there was a banana that was involved, and there was no banana. And I was just like, I don't want to have anything to do with OBS. I'm just going to use my Loom for recording, and it's clean. But as Autonomy gets under your skin, and it's funny how this fall, Joshua and Anthony and myself all came up with pretty much the same idea, but in a different department. Joshua is doing the marketing and support team for Autonomy. So everybody who's doing marketing is gathering together and working as a team. Tony is doing the support of web development and those kind of aspects. And then and we didn't talk to each other about this. This just happened. This is just like a natural evolution of somebody who goes through Autonomy. And I came up with the idea of gathering all the therapists, coaches, psychologists, and everybody who's doing that kind of thing, who wants to be involved in my project, and bringing them together and bringing a podcast to people who may not be ready for Autonomy, who may not be at this level of awareness or independent thinking, but who may still feel like their life is not as comfortable as it may be, or not as flowy as it could be. And so we're going to get together, we're going to create a podcast in order to support those people who are just curious about stepping up and into their own power, but not really sure how to get there or what to do. And it will be very simple stuff, like how to have a conversation. Very, very basic stuff. But, that's also important. And
Agnieszka, what's the name of the podcast?
We have just arrived at the name. It's Raising Excellence. So.
And who all is involved?
At this time is Deirdre, Dennis, Tim, and Sam, and myself. But we're open to other people. I think that other therapists in the group are just waiting to see how we bring us forward. And because we're all season 1, we work together. We've been used to working together for a really long time. So the other thing I wanted to say is, my gosh, Tyler, you have grown so much in like, how long? 3 months, 2 months? Wow. And so one of my skills is habitual muscle patterns, like in your face. and your whole thought patterns have completely changed in the last 2 months. You used to be high-strung, stressed out, very hard on yourself, hard on others, and very sort of like in a square box. And now you have very much softened, and your interactions with people are just like so much more flow and so much more loving. And it's like you're blossoming into a beautiful rose.
Why, thank you. That was very nice. And it's from the feedback from people like yourself. And I definitely have settled into feeling more comfortable with everything. So I think before, even like on camera, like I was a lot more shaky. And that's just like the body expressing itself that it's nervous or that it's stressed. And so you're right. And that's a good observation. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it's quite a...
Go ahead.
Well, it's quite a stance to be able to open yourself up like you just did for correction, and because it requires trust and vulnerability. And there's this like tipping point I've noticed in my own life of once you start working on self-development, you need that feedback. So the more that people can point out my flaws, areas that I have weaknesses in, like bring it on, because I then get to be able to focus on that, strengthen it, and become a better person. Whereas prior to that shift into that, I'd be offended. I'd be offended if somebody like pointed out a weakness of mine, just because I was trying to hide that from myself, from others. So it's really inspiring to see, Tyler, your progress so rapidly, and what you just said is testimony of that.
Yeah, I'm glad I didn't say it earlier, because now it's perfect.
Well, we're going to keep this train moving. I have another clip from this last week. We had our first Empathic Communication Practice Group, where Amanda, who is on her way to become a certified NVC trainer, put together on, I believe it was Wednesday, a practice session with Zoom. We were able to do breakout rooms, which I was really excited to test and to try out. But there was a group of us. We got some instructions, and then we do a breakout room where everybody gets paired up with another. It's private. You're able to use real world experiences to talk compassionately with one another. And I got a couple of clips to highlight that.
And I've been part of practice groups where we just pick a topic for the evening. Sometimes it's pre-planned. Sometimes we just decide to do what's alive for someone in the moment. Sometimes it's pretty much just all empathy, which is fine too. We like to call them empathy baths, where someone's really needing some support, and to have a community of people around them to support them, even just to listen, can be really healing and helpful for them to move forward. So I just want to emphasize the value of practice groups. So we'll try these here in Autonomy, and if you are so interested, there might be NVC organizations where you live. There's a website called the Center for Nonviolent Communication that has a listing of NVC trainers and organizations around the world. You can even check into their website to find out if there's activity around you. And if so, there might be practice groups you can plug into as well. Or you can take the initiative to start your own. So,
Amanda, would you be able to give an example of when someone might need an empathy bath? Is it somebody who's like really whiny and just needs a lot of attention?
I would recommend an empathy bath when someone's really struggling with some emotions that they're not able to work through, or they're having difficulty connecting with their needs. So I wouldn't, to call someone whiny is a judgment, right? So if someone is feeling some really intense emotions and they aren't able to work them through on their own, then having that empathy bath where literally whoever is around them, just they can either listen silently and provide support that way, or they can help reflect what the person is saying, what's going on for them, as well as possibly guessing feelings and needs that might be alive for them. That's where I would say that it's most beneficial, and it should be timed. It shouldn't be something that goes on forever. You put a boundary around it. We're going to do this for 15 minutes, and that also helps. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So for example, like if you're at work and then somebody else gets the raise that you've been working really hard towards, and you're pissed off, but when somebody tells you just get over it, it doesn't really meet your needs for being heard and understood, and realizing that you worked really hard for that and it didn't happen.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Joshua, the gentleman I spoke with today on my sales call has the idea of creating what he calls empathy rings, where he would train his managers to literally provide essentially a safe space. When I say safe, just, a welcoming space for someone who's having a really hard time in the moment in their stores, to go to their manager and have this empathy ring where a couple of people, maybe the manager and maybe one or two other people, just sit for 10 or 15 minutes to help support the individual that's feeling as if in crisis in that moment. It could be that two employees are arguing, or the manager and the employee. There's a wide range of reasons why someone might request an empathy ring, but the idea is that they have it there, and then the managers are trained on how to provide that kind of support, that framework for a short period of time for the individual to ideally help them get back into self-regulation.
So Amanda's practice sessions is going to be a really valuable resource because it has real world application on how to process emotions in real time. And in the business world, like there's lots of opportunity for stress. And because you typically are working with other human beings, oftentimes who don't have a culture of excellence, miscommunication happens, and in business it could lead to the destruction of companies. Amanda is helping out a company right now by giving them a framework for their management to be able to handle miscommunication and stressful situations inside of their business. And so each week we're going to be getting together and doing different practice exercises, and really it's that it improves your listening skills. It improves your ability to operate under stress. When you have a stressful situation, your brain starts shutting down. How to not react and make the situation worse, but to actually be able to express yourself accurately, handle the situation that you're going in. And so I think Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern time, there'll be these practice groups going on, and I'm really looking forward to participating in them.
My apology for my mic, but I just wanted to add that those breakout sessions is something that I've been using Zoom for a while, and I just I never knew that was even possible, and that was really an awesome feature that I think for me, I do I'm doing a community summit today in which you might have 10 or 15 people involved, and to have that kind of ability, I think is something that is really awesome, and I would love to learn more about how to pull that off, because that really is something that I think is a really unique feature. And
I agree. I was excited.
Man, it's just another awesome thing about this group of people is, man, all these new things that are coming to light.
Yeah, it adds on
Awesome.
adds on a really intimate aspect to not just giving a presentation where the presenter is giving information one way, but you invite audience interaction. Those breakout rooms create a private room between smaller groups so that they can have breakout or they can have their own time and conversation to try out the exercises that are going on. And Michael, did it feel private and intimate for you? Mic's off.
Yeah, it was really awesome. I got to work with Ty a little bit, and just our little discussion, then bringing that back to the main group. I'm one. I've done a bunch of labs and workshops and stuff like that, and I really want to encourage people to be active, and certainly in the virtual space, it's hard to do that, when you've got like a presenter and everybody else is just kind of waiting, and then maybe one or two people can talk at the same time, but everybody else just has to sit back and observe. But when you can actually get people, involved and they're working with each other, that's when you really do get that experience learning that really kind of lets them, get involved in what the information is and how it works for them. And so I think it's awesome, and I'm looking forward to certainly participating in that as well, because I really do think that Amanda's got something that's really very useful, and it's certainly something that it applies to a couple of the things that I'm doing with my pursuits. So it's awesome.
Excellent. Thanks for that feedback. Yeah, Wednesdays, 7 p.m. Eastern time. Feel free to just hop on in and learn something new and put it to practice. Next up, this broadcast is going to be published by Wednesday this coming week. And by that time, Hedda Marie and myself will be having our meeting. And Hedda Marie, you want to talk about what it is that we're meeting about?
Yes. Basically, I'm encouraging Joshua and everybody else to develop an online course, because I strongly believe that teaching online is one of the most powerful marketing strategies that we have at hand. I don't know if you have ever had an issue in your house, like for example, changing tile or rebuilding, and you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and you find out that the materials are very inexpensive compared to what you have to pay to someone coming to your house and do it for you. And it's brilliant especially Home Depot in Florida, or in the city where I live in Hallandale, Florida, they have these courses on Saturdays where you can have your kids coming, and you see little kids learning to put tile with their parents, and then their parents realize that it's really hard on the knees. It's just tiring, it's draining. It's just better to pay Home Depot to do it. Do you get my point? So if you are leveling your business, like if you're doing something that people can just grab, but then if you have another level where people say, I want to learn that, and you can teach them how to do it. So that's what I want to concentrate on, and how to design learning experiences. And so that's what we're going to, and I want to use some of his content to show how to develop courses online, how to design courses online.
So I'm really excited. We're meeting on Tuesday, and I put together, I recorded my process when we conducted some Autonomy Facebook ads, and Kara helped out with the copy and putting those together. And we spent $500 and tested out 48 different variations. And so Hedda Marie is going to help me organize that and be able to share that in a course format so others can watch and learn and be able to do that for themselves. So Hedda Marie, really looking forward to our meeting. I know from that we'll be able to help Hedda Marie with her own course on how to make courses. So excited to get that done and out there available to everybody. Well, on Wednesday, Richard put together his next episode on SmartReads, and it premieres in 3 days. So I just want to showcase that. By the time this gets produced and uploaded, this will be available for everybody to read. But he covers the book Technopoly by Neil Postman. I was able to watch it live while it was being recorded, as well as everyone else inside of Autonomy, which is another benefit of being a part of this community, is you're able to interact with Rich as he goes through his books on his shelves, and makes it a fun interactive process, because you can have questions and have them directly answered while he's recording in production. Anybody gain some value from this last book?
I have not. I haven't read it yet. I just want to say Neil Postman is most also known for a book called Amusing Ourselves to Death, also highly recommendable. I look forward to seeing the premiere. I haven't seen it yet. I can't wait. Sorry, Hedda Marie, go ahead.
Yeah, I think what really grabbed me was the reality that I jump on technology because I love it and because I want to be updated. But going through that book, it make me sort of take a step back and think, am I just jumping on technology without processing if this is conducive to my goals? And then I was thinking, maybe I should be more discriminatory when it comes to technology. I just don't know how to go about doing that. But it left more questions than answers, but it really drew me to get those resources and keep thinking about that.
Yeah, it's something that all of us need to consider, and what he mentioned in one of the interviews, and I'm sure in the book, the Faustian bargain that technology brings is, it's offering you, ultimate intelligence, or the most knowledge that any human being has ever been able to acquire. Now someone has in their pocket, right? So there's this great upside, but what he was doing, the contrarian side of him, the detractor, the questioner, right, coming in and saying, yeah, this is great, but what about this? What about this? What about this problem that this might present? And I think that's really key to do that. And it takes a certain individual to be able to stand up and do that. When in his time, everybody was really just getting ready for what we're experiencing now. And when he was discussing these things in the early 90s, there was a little bit of foresight going in, especially with that book title that Chris just mentioned, Amusing Ourselves to Death. Yeah, like right on. That's exactly where we're at now, mentally as a whole, not a blanket statement for the people here in this room. But if you look at, the dopamine addiction to the devices, and the F on the Facebook is shaped like the modern human being when you walk into any kind of place now, restaurant or Starbucks or grocery store, everyone, and, there's all the positive sides to that. But again, the point is to not always be in this one seasoned world side of looking at things, at the positive aspect of, humanity is always just evolving. There's clearly some negative sides to technology and what it's done to people's attention span and how people communicate face to face, or the lack thereof, and their inability to, I think autonomy is also a great example of how, with all these tools and the flood of ways to communicate now, people still have to actually get on and practice and work through all those inner things that they have going on inside with themselves. in order to work through that. The technology doesn't just somehow give you that inner connection, inner spirit, inner voice to be able to connect to and speak to other people, not only just about business and other things, but philosophy and really questioning these big questions in life of, who we are, what are we doing here, these more philosophical questions. So the technology doesn't provide that either. It doesn't ask the questions for you. So just the Gutenberg press and literacy itself doesn't provide people the ability to think critically. It doesn't give them somehow magically the ability to weigh things in their head and use some method like the trivium. So Postman's work and any other number of people who've talked about this, Patrick Wood, Technocracy Rising is another really good book that Richard mentioned. So yeah, absolutely. That and History Connected the week before tie together this time. So it's all quite synchronistic and a little bit of ironic too that, here we are using these tools and technology at the same time. So hopefully we're able to use it for good. And, hopefully that's not just naive, that we're not just using some military industrial complex trap, like Chris was saying earlier, to categorize us all. And once we're categorized, now the trap really gets sprung. But anyway, I've rambled on enough now. I'm sure Michael or somebody else would have something interesting to say about Neil Postman's Technopoly.
It's a double-edged sword.
Whoa.
You're cutting out, but that was really emphasized well.
Can I piggyback and something that Tyler just said?
Yeah, of course.
So he mentioned Gutenberg, and that I like the fact that he mentioned that, because when that technology came about, it didn't make people, it didn't give people the ability to read, but it revealed the need to learn how to read. And the same with technology. We have so much technology, but it is revealing the digital gap. And I think this is why I love autonomy, because I see ourselves bridging the gap, the digital gap in this generation. And I don't know if Richard, in one of those books, you probably made the correlation between the digital gap increasing the levels of poverty in our generation, which is almost contradictory. So I'm just very excited about this effort and this group. I'm very, very proud to be part of you guys, of your lives, and this program.
It's mutual. And this is where I got the idea of that I was allowing myself to be exposed to inputs and hopping over processing and then just outputting what I just heard from the podcast or from whatever show I was just watching. I had to self-reflect and realize, like, I was doing that. I was exporting my processing, or not even going there, and just parroting something that I often look down on others for doing.
Why were you doing that, Joshua?
It's easy. It's the easy route. Like, processing requires energy with my brain and time and downtime to be able to reflect, and I really wasn't providing that into my life often enough. But again, love autonomy because it's a place where I can, like, hold an idea and then share it with others, bounce it back and forth, and come to my own conclusions with it.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking more down the line of, I mean, I do the same. I've made the same mistakes. That's the way we're programmed, isn't it? If you go to public school, that's the way we're programmed. We're programmed to react emotionally and not think about the logic in between. You jump straight to the rhetoric without sorting out the grammar and the logic first. And not only public schooling, but also it comes at you from other directions like mainstream media sources and other marketing sources like that.
Right.
I wanted to give Richard some credit here, because I think it really what this this thing, he's really kind of leading us down a path, and I think this is a perfect example of what he's bringing to the table, and he's really kind of setting an environment within autonomy, and number one, the idea of that things have pluses and minuses, that there's valuable things, but there's also the potential for harm, and being able to see both is something that I can see how Richard is very curious. I mean, I really feel like he's a genius in my mind, but he's bringing out the genius in all of us by demonstrating how what his curiosity is about and how he goes about learning. But then he's also demonstrating this other really important thing, which is we've got to look at both sides. And it's the same thing with people too. We've got to look at people as not being just good or bad, but both. Both people have good and bad things. And really, this Technopoly and Neil Postman in particular really has made me feel better about myself, because I guess I'm kind of accused of being a Luddite at times, because I am kind of the old school mentality where I'd rather talk to people in real life than try and get them on the phone or text them or something like that. And so I feel like it's making me feel more comfortable about just being who I am, and allowing the guys that want to do the technology to do the technology, and I'll just do the thing that I'm good at. And so there's 3 points there, and I think they're all great. And I think this is just another the epitome of what makes this experience so great, and certainly something that should be inviting for everybody that might be interested in coming into autonomy, is really feeling better about what you bring to the table, and it being something that is uniquely valuable for everybody else.
Yeah, teaching us to be responsible with the tools that we have.
Can I just speak to the genius for a couple seconds here?
Sure.
So genius in Greek mythology is not something you are, it's something you have, and everybody is born with
Roman
a genius.
mythology.
A genius is Roman mythology. A genius is something that you cultivate and follows you around all your life. So we can all get in touch with our own genius and bring it forward.
Very well depicted with that little angel and demon on our shoulder.
That was from Eric.
I thought it was a little angel.
Agnieszka, is that the demon on your shoulder we can hear in the background?
That's the angel and the demon all at once.
Well, we're going to move right into the last segment of our show today, and that was last night's lecture. We're now in week 9 of autonomy, and this week we covered how to learn how to outgrow your status quo. This was, a 5-hour lecture, and there was so much information that, as I said, you really need the later seasons to be able to grow and to soak up all the information that's shared there. This is one of the slides that really jumped out to me. If somebody would have asked me what my methods were 5-10 years ago to do any of these things, manage your time, identifying which exists, validate the contents of your mind, resolve disputes and conflicts, bring massive value to everyone you interact with, I wouldn't have had an answer to any of those. And this method is taught inside of autonomy. Once you become aware of it, that's where, like Tyler, you welcome feedback, because now you see some areas of weakness that can be strengthened. And the more feedback and the more times that you're able to practice and fail, the quicker your method develops and you turn that into a strength.
Yeah, and the top one there, manage your time. I like that it's on the top. That's really important. But yeah, I mean, inviting feedback is something I think that I did when I first started recording myself to myself, because I listened to a few of the first recordings that I did, And I'm not saying like now I'm a speech expert or something, but you listen to yourself for the first time, or really critically listening, and there was some cringe-worthy moments, right? But then you really learn over time. And then obviously I'm not perfect, right? I'm never claiming to be, and never going to be, but I'm striving towards excellence, and implementing the skills on that slide daily are only going to bring positive output. So yeah, there's no embarrassment or anything if there's something that I say wrong, even because if you're legitimately trying to do what you're trying to do and you're an authentic person, you can always come back and correct. Obviously, there's things you could probably do and say that would be like catastrophic to your friendships and relationships with other people. But the more and more that you're living in integrity and excellence and being an authentic person, then that probably won't happen. That's not likely to happen, because there's not room for that to occur, because you're being an authentic person, right, online. And that's another big part of that inviting feedback, is like, if you're being authentic, like if you're just trying to put on a mask and act like some other person when you're in these interactions with people, then the feedback's going to be inauthentic. The people that you're creating relationships with are going to be inauthentic. But in business, I think this is all just as true. Like, I maybe didn't say all that related to sounding like it was related to business, but in business, absolutely all those things are true. And the more authentic you are, and the less you're trying to fool somebody, and the more that your product or your service is an authentic and real thing that's not deceiving in any way, the way that it's coming across and the way that you're selling it, then the less room there is for error of anything coming back on you that's negative, as far as feedback from the clients or problems coming up. So it all ties together in life. And the point is to live that way 100% of the time, all the time, and not have different masks and personas that you're putting on for this situation or that situation. It shouldn't be necessary.
Yeah, I've heard it described as your authentic self is just bringing all those personas into alignment with one another, and that's where you operate from. In the last few minutes, do each of you want to share something from last night's lecture that really stood out to you?
Yeah, I liked what does done look like to you? What does complete look like to you? Now, I remember that from season 1, but seeing that again really helped me keep it real and put it into perspective. I haven't been consciously bringing that thought to the forefront as much as I should have lately. So that was something that affected. I said, oh yeah, I really need to start the power of visualization and imagination. John Rappaport once gave a great interview talking about that, the power of imagination. Just foresee it done, and then go backwards and take the steps necessary to get it done. That helped me out a lot last night.
And that really helps people with analyst paralysis, people that like to overanalyze and not take action, right? Who else got something?
Joshua, well, I'd just like to add that is the slide that you pointed out is also the one that I was just like, oh my God, I thought it's something that I really feel like I'm a big fan of Edward Deming and total quality management, Six Sigma, that kind of thing. And statistical process control is essentially what he's talking about. But it's always, the idea of constantly improving. And, it's something that I bring to the table, but I just never really verbalized it. I just thought that's what everybody wants, and just kind of assumed that that's something everybody knows. But that is really a key feature that most people don't think about, and it is really what is the magic that we bring to the table, is our ability to understand what is our method of bringing value to the table, or what is the process that we use that combines our skills and knowledge and experience into something valuable. If we don't know what that is, if we can't explain and teach that to other people, we are really robbing ourselves of our own value and certainly robbing other people of the value that we have that we can share with others. There's another point that Richard has brought out, is that like knowledge shared is wisdom. That's, I think, what, as we grow older, and it's certainly something that's important for me, is I do seek wisdom. I want to be the wise one, and I've always looked for people that had wisdom to share, to gain, but I never really understood how that came about, and it really is relatively simple if you start to understand that everything is a method, and all those methods turn into, that what he talks about later in last night's thing about organizing the data is really the key to the whole thing, because that's the scarcity that people really need to save time and get value quicker and get from A to B quicker, is those scarce resources of knowing the methods and knowing how to interpret the data to make the most of it. So
Well said.
Awesome stuff.
Thanks, Michael. Agnieszka?
The thing that struck me the most yesterday was when he said that you have to have your highest and best outcome at the forefront of your mind as you start the endeavor, whatever the endeavor may be. And it made me think about all those people who have no goals, right? Like, you grow up, you're an adult, now you have no goals. You're just going from one TV show to the next TV show, and you go to work to get the money, to get the bread, to get the strength to go to work, to get the money, to get the bread, to get the strength to go to work, to get the money. And it's this cycle that people get stuck in because they don't have a vision past that, to overcome that reality and that stagnation that they experience in their lives.
Absolutely. Well, go ahead, Michael. Do you have something else you want to add?
I just want to make a point, or another point, that I think Richard has also brought to the table, and that is, and it's certainly something that I advocate for in regard to like your daily habits and your daily practices and goal setting. If you don't do it now, if you don't do it live, if you don't do it every day, if you don't incorporate what you want in the future into your daily practices, it's just never going to happen. And so, like, that daily reminder and those daily processes and daily methods, and understanding how to incorporate those things and do the scheduling and do the daily things that incorporate those things, and effectively the mantras, the philosophies that you practice on a daily basis, as what Tyler was talking about in regard to doing things, with integrity. The daily practices are where that really comes out, and where people can start to really understand and trust you, because they see you doing it on a daily basis. They see it being done consistently, and it makes a big difference. Unfortunately, most people don't understand how to trust people and what trust is all about. But it is really our daily practices, and then our consistency, of doing what we say we're going to do, not only with other people, but with ourselves as well. That makes a difference, and that builds confidence, and takes us to where we want to go.
That's a fantastic point to wrap up this week's episode on Do It Live podcast. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Chris McMillan, Hedda Marie, Tyler, Agnieszka, and Michael for jumping in. This has been a really rich episode, and we just really scratched the surface on this last week. There was so much more that we didn't even get time to mention. Join us next week as we cover the next lecture, and we got a bunch of exciting things already scheduled for this coming week, so you're not going to want to miss it. But first, subscribe to our podcast on YouTube, while we're still on there. And if you want to know more about autonomy, you can go to getautonomy.info/ignite, and tell them one of us sent you, and be able to join the autonomy community and really make some large changes in your life. See you again next week, and thanks for tuning in.